central nervous system that our eyes are taking in so much information. And then we have our peripheral nervous system, and that comes through our neck. That's like our wiring harness that comes down from our brain, through our brain stem to the rest of our body. And that's such a calculated mechanism. You can almost think of like Predator, so that when we can reposition the head, that those calculations get readjusted. Welcome back to the Think Fitness Life podcast, where we try to provide answers and solutions for your fitness journey so that you can live your best life and get out of the gym so that you can be enjoying the work you put in at the gym. Today we're going to talk about movement. It's the hardest thing to convey over audio, I'm not going to lie. And it's easiest when we are one-on-one with somebody, because I can tell someone to do something. I can just physically like move their foot or ankle if it's not in the right position. I can walk around them and see different perspectives and see if something's not in good alignment or something, or how to adjust things so they're in a perfect position. And even when we're doing it in like a video training setting, that's still difficult. You can do some cueing, but then there's a delay on the audio anyway, and there's not everything you can see from one camera angle. So without giving any more excuses over how this is going to be challenging, I just wanted to basically provide a podcast about how to use your body. And I think the first thing to think about is we have stages of development. So from infancy, we had that fetal position. Everyone should know what that position is. But then we were on our back as a baby, and then we learned to roll over, and then we were on our stomach, and then we learned how to push ourselves up, and we were in a tall kneeling position, and then we learned how to get into that half kneeling position, and then stand up and lift ourselves up. So when it comes to movement, what's the word I'm looking for, like quality, it's always best to reset back to these developmental stages. Like, you can think that we are born every day, that we are kind of reliving our stages of development every day. Like, first thing in the gym, I start on the ground. I don't care what anyone says. Like, I will do even just a simple 90-90 couple breathing into my abdomen and get my abdominal cylinder firing and my pelvic floor on. That just is such good cueing for me, so that when I have 330 pounds on my back, or I have 240 pounds on my front squat, I can compress that abdominal cylinder and feel the support that my spine needs so that I don't get hurt. So with that part out of the way, in terms of the stages of development, I think what we typically see is people who are anywhere over between 30 and 60, and they just don't even know how to control their head and neck. That's the first thing I see, is that they go, I tell them to just like stand up tall and turn their head to the left, turn their head to the right, or tilt their ear to the left and tilt their ear down to their shoulder on the right. And you can watch their scapula raise, their trap raise. And usually they don't notice it right away. They're like, do you feel that? I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, you're like compensating, or you're like meeting your movement pattern with another muscle. And our traps can be so associated with our neck that it can just lead to so much tightness, even in our head, and pressure in our head. So if we're talking about movement, top down, stand up tall, and what I want you to do is just try to keep your shoulders depressed down, turn your head all the way to the left. You can be sitting or standing here, and you should be able to get your chin in line with your shoulder, so that you're essentially at a 90-degree angle from where your chin started. And you should be able to get to that position without much difficulty. And then what you want to do is obviously check the other side. And what you're doing also is being aware of what's flaring up. Does something feel different on one side or the other? Because that's feedback that your body's trying to send you signals so that you can be aware of what's going on. Maybe it thinks it's supposed to have the right trap elevated because of just repetitive movement. And it's trying to say, hey, we're still elevated over here. And you're like not even listening to the signals because you're already like listening to music, or you're so focused on getting the workout done to get back to work that you're not even in your body. You don't even hear these signals. So the neck is like so crucial to me. So after that one, when you go left and right, do, I would say 5 on each side. Then what I want you to do is lift your head at the top from the crown up, and I want you to just tilt your ear down to your chin. Tilt your ear down to your chin. And I don't have like maybe Eric could help us here. Is there like a technique, or is there like a definitive depth we should be getting here?
Like range of motion?
Yeah.
There is, but no one's going to measure it. So what we kind of look for, like lateral flexion, is the ability to flex laterally and not feel stuck. So what I think in terms of a lot of
Feel stuck by the on the side that you're flexing
stuck
towards.
or limited, yeah, towards that side. You'll
Okay.
feel stretch on if you're leaning your head to the left, you should feel stretch on your right side. But if
Right.
you feel
But
limited or like a block
okay.
when you rotate or go side to side, that's more of an indication. Because what you're saying is a lot of us humans really don't know how we move unless we look into a mirror. And that's right. So when you put numerical numbers to it, like, oh, you should be 30 degrees. Well, who the heck knows what 30 degrees of lateral neck flexion is, or shoulder flexion, or whatever? And most of the time, people can't comprehend that because our brains aren't built that way. So I always say it's more about how we feel compared to the other side. So we're always comparing movement to the other side of yourself, because you can move different than me, because we're oriented, compensated, whatever differences, and then we're just comparing that. So when it comes to the side to side, you should feel what side has more freedom, range of motion feels better than less. And then you'll start
Okay.
kind of finding that sense.
But you're saying a lot of times people feel like restricted on the side they're trying to flex to,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll feel extreme tightness from the side that they're trying to get extra
Yeah.
extension out of, like the opposite side they're flexing from.
So what
So as
I'll
long
literally
as
feel is a block. Like I'll try to go to one
a
side and
block.
I just can't go any further. Like it's like jamming up. Because what happens is what's going to happen is, especially when we're talking to the neck, your occiput and atlas are going to eventually kind of come together, and there's going to be no more range of motion through that on one
Anyway.
side or the other.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Like
eventually
the,
you need that block to stop. You don't want to just be able to fold your neck in half and have problems, because we know that the head neck down is going to set the rest of the alignment for the whole system, and that's the most important one to have movement options through. So if you lock
okay.
up the neck, everything down the chain is going to have problems.
See, folks, that's why we have a team here, because we wouldn't be able to do this without each other. And I'm going to take a step back then into some of this stuff and just say, hold that position and breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Just turn to your left, hold that position for 5 breaths. Turn to your right, hold that position for 5 breaths. I still feel like there is an advantage to being like dynamic with it. Like if you're having trouble getting to that full range of motion, maybe you do like a couple before you try to hold that position and try to breathe. But then same thing with the lateral tilt, lateral ear down to your other shoulder, try to hold that position and just breathe, because each exhale you're going to actually release tension from the muscle fibers. You're actually going to send signals to your brain and nervous system to relax, and that will help facilitate the disengagement and inhibition of certain muscles so that you can get the range of motions that you need.
And that's
So,
what you look for,
no, yeah,
because
yeah.
breathing, any stretch should not be held without a breath or air movement in and out. And you did mention it earlier about you're going to get expansion and compression of the cranium cavity. So air and fluid are going to move through the cavities to move your bones of your skull. So when you're holding whatever position it is and take that inhale, you are going to influence the muscles by expanding cranial bones and positions with air and fluid to allow those muscles to inhibit and relax.
And quick side note, just that's so fascinating because it makes me think of this client that I had who he was telling me stories about how his neck used to get super tight, and he didn't know his neck was getting tight, but he would get bouts of vertigo, and he would go to the doctor, and long story short, they figured out it was because his neck kept getting stiffer and stiffer, and it was probably like not allowing that fluid out, right, and then just like building up this pressure and fluid, and it had his vestibular system. I mean, I'm not going to try to diagnose it, but
Oh
I
yeah,
think it's so
you're,
fascinating.
you're spot on, because like the lymphatic ducts will drain through the cranium and down the side of the neck. So if you have compressed compression of anterior neck muscles. We're talking airwaves, like tracheas are shown on x-rays to actually get closed and compressed down. And then you compress that so you don't get drainage, especially at night. Then you're going to get fluid retention. And as you're not optimally moving through your system, fluid is. So yeah, you're on that path.
Can you also experience headaches?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
100%. Those
Yeah.
are my first ones that are usually symptoms of tight and toned up muscles are causes of headaches because they will pull on the attachment sites of the cranium, whatever bones they are. So you have your temporalis is on the side, your temples, and a lot of times it's the levator in the back that'll pull down on the occiput that creates these tensions. And they're more tension headaches because you're actually compressing your
Mm.
skull, and underneath it you're compressing your brain because the brain can't really sense pain. So where are you getting that pain? You're getting that pain receptors from either the bones or the muscles, but it feels like it's deep. So
Mm.
100%.
Interesting.
A lot of tight
Interesting.
muscles will lead to headaches and chronic headaches. And
Yeah.
that's usually next question I go, well, do you have jaw problems, TMJ, TMD? Then that will kind of lead to
Grinding at night, things like that. Yeah.
all
So
interconnected
so back to the neck. We just got which one? What is this called?
rotation. So side to
Just
side.
rotation.
Yep.
Just side to side rotation, lateral flexion, and then I also want to bring up like protraction and retraction. I think that's another important skill set to have. Just that control, that ability to protract your head forward, but then that ability to also pull your head back into that strongest tall position above your spine. So I like to do those head forward and back, and then I also do like to do rotating down and up.
So right now, if you can't see, he's leaning all the way back. He's doing chin up towards the ceiling, and then he comes down, chin towards like the top of the sternum.
And I think a key piece here is that you're also at first trying to like stack your spine. You're trying to, as if there's a string at the top of your head at your little cowlick at the back of your head here. It's pulling you straight up. And then from that position, that's when you want to try to tilt that head and chin forward and then bring it up and back. Otherwise, you're just going to add to more flexion
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
rather than getting the full extension. We're trying to get both. We're trying to basically wake up our body and use all the range of motion we have so that we can get the most out of a workout we're doing and we're not going to contribute to bad movement patterns, bad muscle fibers, bad muscle imbalance, tension headaches, things like this that we're talking about here that can end up as symptoms from not addressing this stuff. And then probably the only other thing I'd say with the neck is I used to love back in wrestling. We used to get our head on the ground and do like circles forward and back, and then we do like a bridge and we were like on our hands and feet or with our butt in the air and we're rolling our neck that way. So it depends what you're doing, but if you're just someone who's working out and just general fitness goals, then you're probably fine with just doing the basic stuff we talked about, just the range of motion stuff. But if you're an athlete and you're someone who uses your neck a lot, especially if you're like a grappler or something, or wanting to get into that, definitely protect your neck. Definitely find ways to stretch it out and warm it up before you get going. It's going to go a long way. Yep. What you want
Especially,
to say? One more
especially, yeah,
piece there.
especially the pre workout because it's often missed or misused because no one really thinks about it. But as we said, if you do not unlock or let's say get the head and neck into a more neutral position where it can flow front to back, side to side, then you start your lifting patterns and you're going to get stuck in whatever pattern that's driving through the head and neck. So I think it's the most important part. I know some people like to do a bottom up approach, but as humans, our neurological systems are not built in our heels. We have a brain and it's going to stem from that. So get those in for movement purposes. And honestly, it's cool when you watch people do it. You can do some of those exercises and you might gain degrees of hamstring flexibility or flexibility in the rest of the system because you just altered tension and tone above everything else. So it
Mm,
can unlock a lot of other things down the chain.
mm. Yeah, I just want to echo what you're saying there because we have our central nervous system that our eyes are taking in so much information And then we have our peripheral nervous system, and that comes through our neck. That's like our wiring harness that comes down from our brain, through our brain stem to the rest of our body. And that's such a calculated mechanism. You can almost think of like Predator, so that when we can reposition the head, that those calculations get readjusted and it understands, oh, wait a second, look at that. We have more range of motion over here than we realized. Or, okay, this muscle doesn't have to be engaged anymore. I think the other piece I want to add to this is the shoulders, because I think the head, neck, and shoulders, we can probably include this all in one episode here. I don't want to throw too much at people, but I think it's important to keep this industry about what it is. And what's funny is I was inspired by watching Nate Diaz this past weekend, and he is just such a does the simple things better than anyone else. You watch him, boom, boom, boom. He's got the fastest hands. He is such a boxer at its foundation, but still a great jiu-jitsu artist as well, and great kickboxer as well. But my point here is that it's back to the basics. It's not about finding these hidden things that no one's ever done before, these superfoods, and that's the secret, or one thing that fixes everything. You're going to constantly do that. You're going to constantly be adding to the pile that you've developed, but it's about doing these fundamentals better than anyone else. And that's what you look at. If you study the greats, that's what you'll notice about them. People like Sonny Webster, he's like probably the best Olympic lifter out there. The dude will take 400 pounds and he'll throw it on his, or I'll say he'll probably take 300. I haven't seen him do it with 400, but he'll take 300 pounds, hang clean it, catch it in zombie arm position, come up, pop it overhead, go into a back squat, jerk it, and then just do a bunch of other stuff with it. Like just plays around with it. And if you watch his mobility, it's phenomenal. And a major piece that you see is his head is up. And what you'll also, if you walk into the gym, next time you guys are in the gym, I want you to note what people's head is doing when they squat. And I guarantee it is going down. And it plays a role to their mobility and to the way they're going to get what they're going to get out of that lift. So if you can remember to keep your head up, look straight ahead, and keep because you're gonna be fighting when you first do it. I guarantee you're gonna be fighting. Your head's gonna want to dive forward. But if you find it easy for you, then great. Hopefully that helps you get a good depth. And if you can stay in that stacked position, then once you're at the bottom of the squat in the hole, it should be super easy to fire right back out of it because you maintained a perfect position. You're still over your center of mass, and that way you are efficient with all of your levers in your body versus having to add extra leverage or torque or tension to joints, ligaments, and other muscles. That was my little rant on why it's so important to be doing this stuff.
And I think the fun part is there's so much of this in between. So it's not this black and white, head up or head down. There's certain degrees. Now we're not going to put numbers to it, but when you get in a squat, you don't want to be neck cranked back into complete extension or hyperextension, and you're looking up towards the ceiling. And a lot of times people will do this because they're trying to orient their vision and their eyesight to where they want to go. But instead of using their eyes to go, they're going to use their head to try to move it. And that's a learned behavior as it goes. And especially when you put weight on your back, the body's going to try to adapt to it. So I always think, like Mac said, look forward. Your vision is the most important thing because where your eyes go, your body's going to start to go. And it doesn't need to be up or down. So you can have your head forward, but your vision still be up or down. But it's kind of hard. And it will take some time to differentiate the two, because if you go into too much neck extension, it's going to start extending the lower back too much, that you can start relying on posterior muscles to start compressing too much and not getting enough abdominal contraction. Same thing if you're looking down too much. If you look straight down at your feet, you're going to go where your eyes are. So you get to the bottom. Half the time people start just folding over and they get buried at the bottom. So neck position and eyesight is very important. And I have always people start thinking, and this is where you can use mirrors, where you are in space. Are you looking at yourself in the mirror, and how are you doing? Are you extending too much? Are you slouching? Are you we'll talk about the neck. Are you more forward head posture? And that all plays a role into the movement up and down the system. And like I said earlier about you do a stretch and you can gain of the neck and gain mobility of a hip, I can take that away. If I crank you into hyperextension and really tilt your head back, your squat depth is going to decrease because your body's going to more of a sympathetic fight or flight, and it's going to limit movement options.
And I think one thing I want to say too is it might be easier for people to just film yourself or have someone at the gym film you, whatever. Don't be self conscious about it. I mean, that's the best way to get feedback. And in fact, what's funny is like having the idea to like talk about something like this came up because I'm looking at my clips of my videos, my squats, my front squats and stuff like that, and I'm like seeing, oh my, keep catching myself. Oh, I'm looking down again. I'm looking down again because I get my feet set and I want to stay perfectly centered, but I got to remember to look up. And I don't know, it's just funny because it's not like we're not trying to talk down to people from our high horses or anything.
Yep.
We're trying to literally just like give people the notes that we experience so that we can give people the shortcuts, hopefully. And I think the other piece that I want to mention though is how important the shoulders were. I want to get back to this. Is even just as something as simple as just elevating one shoulder and bringing it down, elevating and bringing it down, doing the opposite side, and then bring your elbow at a 90-degree angle, and just try to bring your shoulder forward and back, like you're doing a little shoulder shake, like a little dance. And then you want to try to do the other side, and just see how your mechanics are and your motor control. And if you have any tightness, try to do both at the same time. And what this will help you do is see where your shoulders should probably be sitting. Because a lot of times what we see here is upper cross is the common term for it, where both your shoulders are internally rotated. And this can be because you're typing at a desk, because we're just forward moving people in general, back to head posture or head positioning. But what we really need to have is we need to have expansion. We need to open up this chamber. A lot of times we think we need to come up, and that's why you'll hear Eric talk about like people trying to overcompensate by staring up at the sky all day long and hoping that their spine resets. But in reality, what you want to do is pull your shoulders open and your shoulders out and get this expansion of your, is it thoracic cavity? Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Thoracic cavity.
Anterior thoracic cavity, chest wall.
Okay. Okay. And have that sit on your rib cage. Now, boom. And I'll take this little tip from Ed Cohen, the king, but when he squats 500 pounds, he's actually trying to pinch his tricep around his lat and then bring his hands in super tight. And the reason is he's trying to keep this chamber open. Because when he keeps that chamber open and he's got 500 pounds on his back and he's in the hole, he can still look forward and keep the tension where he wants, keep himself over center of mass, and come out. So the importance of the neck is also related to the shoulders because of the way that the scapula is going to sit on your rib cage.
And the best part is it's all connected. Like a lot of people go, oh, it's a shoulder plane problem. It's never that. If you have a shoulder problem, there's probably a neck influencing it. And if you can't get the neck to release, you're not going to be able to expand that anterior chest wall. So they go hand in hand. Now, on the flip side, if you were to get anterior chest wall expansion first, without the neck, you might influence the neck. So it's this vice versa that works. But the main thing is when people look at body parts, it's not just a one stop shop. Like on a car, you can change a brake, but here our brakes are connected to our necks, and our necks are connected to whatever else you want to talk to. But especially when it comes to the shoulder, those two are intertwined because your head sits right between the shoulders. And a lot of times with cell phones and computer screens, we do create this forward head posture, which tightens necks up, which increases upper cross syndrome, which really compresses that anterior rib cage. And then it doesn't really allow for proper expansion posterior. So what we'll see is people create humps or roundedness or a kyphotic posture through their thoracic spine to just keep reinforcing a position because that's where their body only knows. So that's how you start getting into patterns and orientations from poor or lack of movement. So yeah, we always want to be expanding and decompressing one side of the body or both, depending on what we need. And it all gets back to what Matt mentioned earlier is breathing. Breathing is very important from a physiological standpoint to compression and decompression standpoint.
And more of like the lack of proper breathing is what we're really talking about, because
Yes,
everybody
that is
doesn't
correct.
breathe properly.
We all need to breathe every day, but it's the proper breathing with things aligned up to allow proper expansion.
It's a yeah. We can go down a rabbit hole of breathing, but I'll say that for another date. But we put together a course. We have like 5 videos. We have some that are in the pipeline right now, but it's like a body mechanics course. It's just the basics. We're just trying to get you to move in these ranges of motions and get your joints moving. Motion is the lotion, and then we'll take that and strength and build from that. But I think the first step is just teaching people about how to use their body, mastering their body. So that's the course that we're running on YouTube right now. You can check out our Think Fitness Life YouTube channel. And we also have a competition going on right now for a $500 Rogue gift card giveaway. We're just trying to find ways to galvanize the community. And what better way to do that than give people money to have to buy gym equipment? Because when you own gym equipment, you feel obligated to use it, because you're like, oh, I spent all this money. It's so pretty. I got to use it. I have this space. I just got to go at least 3 times a week, right? Mm-hmm. So no, but the bigger picture though is that we're going to be doing more of the episodes coming up. We'll talk more about the rib cage, the core, the pelvic floor. We'll talk about the knees, the ankles, the hips in future episodes. But for now, this is, I think, the best place to start with just body mechanics, head, neck, and shoulders. This was Matt Gluckman and Eric Menchie from Think Fitness Life. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll send it over to Eric for any final words. Sometimes we like to throw a quote out here and there.
The only thing I would say is just breathe. Find positions and breathe. 5, 6 inhales and exhales. But with the key, you have to feel and understand breath. You can't just breathe while you're looking at a phone. I want you to feel and understand breath coming in and out. As you master that, and as we go through these episodes and series, you're going to understand why breathing is so important and how it's going to influence your body.
I love it. And I would just say, get in your body, just like Eric said. I mean, that's probably the biggest piece is that, okay, we were born with 1 mouth but 2 ears, so we're meant to do twice as much listening as we do talking. But think about that in your own body, because we're so not present in our body. James Joyce said Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body, and that's what he's joking about in his book. But yeah, that's all we got. And that wraps us up today. If you're looking for more hands-on information, we have a YouTube course, Mastering Your Body, which is just basic body awareness and body mechanics of moving our joints, because it's the foundational piece for exercise. Movement is the basis of all exercise. Without it, we add fitness on top of dysfunction. And we'll catch you next time.